Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fan Appreciation Month here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, I'm checking out a film from 1983. That movie is Women's Prison Massacre. I'm going to tell you guys, when I put this thing on the wish list, I put it on there because of that fucking title. I saw a movie called Women's Prison Massacre, and it's like, I've got to see this shit. It wasn't until after the movie was sent in that I started actually looking up exactly what the fuck the thing is about. And that's when I found out that the film is directed by an Italian filmmaker by the name of Bruno Mattei. Or Bruno Mattei. I never remember which way to pronounce that. I've covered one other film of Bruno's, and that was a zombie film called Hell of the Living Dead, which I remember being absolutely fucking awful. And, I did a touch more digging and found out that this movie was written by the same guy who wrote Troll 2. And you can say a lot about Troll 2. Fuck knows that I did when I covered it. But I still remember enjoying Troll 2. It was an amazing piece of cheesy cinema. I don't know what happens when these two guys, meet up and decide to make a women's prison film, which I'm going to assume has a whole lot of death, otherwise you probably couldn't call it Women's Prison Massacre. I'm hoping for the movie to be interesting. I am sort of holding out far hope of it being good, but I'm hoping for it to at least be interesting. And the only way I'm going to find out if it is interesting is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Women's Prison Massacre. So, I'd just like to say right now that I just watched as the prison guards were, whacking prisoners to get them out of the washroom. They, were, swinging, now they were swinging their nightsticks with literally no force behind them, and even then the things still flopped around because they are the cheapest, flimsiest goddamn things I think I've ever seen. They actually look like they got about 2 inches of padding on them. How the fuck would you stop a prisoner with that? I understand, guys, that this is a low-budget movie, but still, this honestly just makes the whole thing look ridiculously cheap. It's actually a little bit pathetic. Would it be asking too much, guys, for something interesting to happen in this movie? I mean, I've given them a little bit over a half an hour. You'd think you would have established everything. We could have gotten into the story proper. There is less than 1 hour left in this movie, and so far, I've gotten nothing. This movie's gone nowhere fast. It's actually so freaking dull, I'm slowly falling the fuck asleep. Kind of hoping that it gets better, but right now I kind of have my doubts. Alright, I'm just going to say this right now. Had I have been told that this was going to be a movie about a bunch of death row inmates who've taken over a women's prison, bunch of death row inmates who are all there for committing gruesome, unspeakable murders, I think I would have expected a little bit more than this. And also with a movie called Women's Prison Massacre, I would probably have expected a higher body count than this. The body count here, guys, is kind of sad. It's not really enough to, actually be considered a massacre. Of course, the movie still has time to fix that. But unfortunately, as of right now, this movie's kind of boring, and it's not doing anything with its fucking premise to actually make it fucking exciting. It's kind of shit. So with just around 20 minutes left in the film, guys, they're finally promising to live up to the title. Our 4 death row inmates are now promising to massacre the entire prison. Why? Because they very explicitly instructed the cops to not send any officers into the prison. And the district attorney, because the district attorney apparently has these sorts of powers, said fuck it and sent in a team of cops anyway, one of which was carrying a video camera. Because fuck it, why not? I swear, guys, this movie has a really interesting premise, and goddammit, they don't know how to fucking execute it properly. This movie is just tiresome. I'm certainly hoping that at least the last 20 minutes are going to be something interesting, but I kind of doubt it. Well, guys, that was Women's Prison Massacre. Let me shut that off. I want to say right now, this is about the 5th time I have tried to get this motherfucking review section recorded. I have been stopped numerous times, whether it be by my phone, whether it be by people knocking on the door. This is going to be the last attempt I've had at this, because I'm sick and tired of talking about this god-awful fucking movie. Okay? I'm going to make this as short and as sweet as I possibly can. The writing is hideous. What motherfucking writing? Guys, the premise of this movie was really strong. A bunch of male death row inmates were being sent to a women's prison until their sentence was carried out. I do not remember them ever explaining why they send male inmates to an all-women's prison, but oh well, we're just gonna have to rock with it. I do not remember them ever fucking explaining it, and I'm not about to wonder any further. Now, you would think now mind you, now all 4 of these inmates are on death row because they have committed some absolutely disgusting crimes. So you would think, now that they've taken over this women's prison, they probably have a little bit of fun with the inmates. And they do, in the sense that a couple of them go out and they're fucking, and they're fucking a couple of inmates, and a couple of them are also committing fucking rapes and all that. But really, it's very, very little. You would think that with these 4 inmates, mind you, there's only like a shotgun and a fucking razor and a fucking razor blade across all 4 of them in terms of weapons, but you'd think that they would, drag out maybe like a couple of inmates and like torture them, or maybe try to have some fun with them, do something interesting. Perhaps rack up a body count that would actually justify calling this film Women's Prison Massacre. There's barely any kills in this film, and none of them are in any way interesting. Part of that is because we don't have any fucking characters. I couldn't tell you the names of any characters save for 3 of them. I know the names of 2 of our death row inmates. Well, at least I know their nicknames. I know one of them is nicknamed Blade because he carries a razor blade with him at all times. Apparently prisons in Italy don't bother to check their prisoners for weapons before transferring them to prison, especially when they're carrying said weapon betwixt their teeth. And the other one is nicknamed Crazy Boy. I guess because he murdered kids. That was kind of implied once. Otherwise, there's no real reason for him to be called Crazy Boy, and he's the one who's wielding the shotgun. Shockingly, only one of those 2 actually makes it to actually see the outside of this prison, because the other 2 are quickly fucking killed off. The only other character is, I guess, the closest thing to a lead, which is Emmanuel, or Emmanuel. It changes from actor to actor exactly how her name is fucking pronounced. But she doesn't have any fucking personality either. She just stands there. She was framed for some stupid fucking crime, spending 5 years in prison, and the fucking DA is a scumbag. And she knows it, and she's going to fucking expose him as this horrendous, corrupt friggin' dickhead the moment that she gets out of prison. Of course, there is no payoff on that either, unless you count the DA getting shot by fucking Crazy Boy, but that's not really worth it. Beyond that, I could not tell you the names of any other character in this entire goddamned film. Nobody else has any fucking personality. This movie is shallow as shit. They had a really interesting concept, and they did fuck all with it, and goddamn it, that sucks. That really fucking does. And, I kind of had my hopes set real low on this, but I also knew that this was written by the same guy who wrote Troll 2. And Troll 2 at least had an interesting story. They were able to do something with the fucking story. This movie couldn't. They had nothing here in terms of fucking story, and that is absolutely disgusting. I'm going to tell you guys right now, the only thing that kept me going, the only thing that got me to the end of this fucking movie, is the fact that this movie was sent in by a fucking viewer. Otherwise, I would have shut it off, and I would have never finished this. So the fact that I forced myself to sit through it is not a good sign. Acting. I watched the English dub of this, because I don't even think this has the fucking Italian audio. Oh, actually, apparently it does. But it has the English audio by default, which is fine, because I'm going to tell you right now, that cheesy, horrendous dub is probably the only thing worth watching this movie for. Honest to God, it is. I say that because the acting is terrible. There is not a single person in this fucking dub who seems to know how to speak English properly, how to speak it fluently, or how to put any kind of feeling into it. So you're watching all of this. You're watching these characters who are supposed to be screaming as they're running at somebody with a knife, instead of actually sounding like they're screaming and running. It's like there's no feeling, none, and that makes it fucking hilarious. In fact, I'm going to tell you guys, that honest to God is the only reason why that this dub is any good. Is it's so terrible it's going to put a smile on your fucking face. It's probably the only thing that's going to make you feel anything outside of boredom in this fucking movie. Excuse me. I have no idea how good the original acting is. I can tell you that about a third of the film was actually in English. I can tell because the dub almost totally matches what some of these actors are saying. I say almost because it's off by like a word, possibly freaking two, which means that some of these actors were speaking English on set, which makes me wonder why you didn't just use their audio in the English track of this. But oh well, I'm not going to fucking worry about that. What is here is cheesy and kind of fun, and it's the only thing that's going to keep you fucking going. You would probably think that special effects would probably keep you going, but no, because the special effects in this movie are cheap as fuck, alright? There is blood, but the blood is ridiculously bright fucking red. I am talking like a cherry fucking red. Nice, bright, vivid red. The kind of fucking red blood has never been in the history of ever. Alright, the blood is freely flowing everywhere. There are scenes where characters are bleeding and it makes no sense. So as Blade is bleeding out, because there's a bit of a moment where he tries to fuck an inmate who has booby trapped her cooch with his fucking razor blade. It actually makes sense in context, sort of. You know, and he's slowly bleeding out, and he's slowly bleeding out from the gash, from the friggin' gash he has in his friggin' dick. He walks past this holding pen that's got like 20 friggin' inmates, and they're all reaching for him. They're all sitting there, and they're all friggin' like tearing apart his clothing. One of them brandishes a shoe, and on the bottom of the shoe you can see it's covered in red paint. And she slaps him on the shoulder with this frickin' shoe, leaving this giant this bloody shoe print, or my fault, bloody shoe print on his shoulder. I guess the shoe was supposed to break skin, and it just left a giant bleeding sore on his arm. I guess. I'm not totally sure. Blood effects here are terrible. Gore effects here are terrible. The gunplay, at least, is halfway decent, but that's not saying much. Like, at all. That guy's is basically saying nothing. So, what else can I talk about? The sound mix on the dub is pretty good, though, in terms of the dialogue and the music actually being balanced properly. That's awesome. I can totally get behind that. Our camera work here is solid. Our lighting here is really decent. It's just that, guys, you can have decent camera work, you can have great fucking lighting, you can have a sound mix that is flawless, but all of that means nothing when your writing is that fucking terrible. And because of that, I am not going to be able to recommend Women's Prison Massacre, unless you're one of those weirdos who's really into the films of Bruno Mattei. I'm just going to call him Bruno Mattei. I don't give a fuck. If you're really into his shitty, god-awful movies, then you're probably going to love this thing, because it's more of the same that he is so well known for. Unfortunately, his style of filmmaking is not the kind that I'm really, really into. So it obviously was not for me. Oh boy. Really, guys, it is kind of sad that I went into this thing and I had set my expectations ridiculously low, and I was expecting it to at least match the almost non-existent expectations I set. And it couldn't. This movie's boring, it's tedious, the fucking story goes nowhere because there is no fucking story. Just as a tip to future filmmakers who want to do a movie like this, please, if you're going to set up this sort of a premise, do something with it. Do something. Do fucking anything. If you do anything with this premise, you have already made a better film than this piece of shit will ever fucking be. My God. The biggest sin this movie has is that it's boring as hell. No movie should ever be boring because, guys, you know what? You can totally get into a good film and you can revel in a bad film, but a boring movie is just unwatchable. And that is this film's biggest problem. Now, because it's Fan Appreciation Month, Women's Prison Massacre came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in was Gears, and you can find his DeviantArt page at gearsx.deviantart.com. Hold on, I want to double check that. I've got it written down. Yes, gearsx.deviantart.com. Swing over there and check out everything that he's drawn or written. I'm not totally sure what he's all got over there. Gears, I thank you. I was really curious about this. Again, mainly because the title was incredibly interesting sounding, and unfortunately, that's all this movie's got. When all is said and done, is it has a really interesting title, and it doesn't do anything with it. But I wouldn't have found out that if you hadn't have sent it in, and for that I thank you. You're fucking amazing, dude. Once more, that is gearsx.deviantart.com. Now, the opening act of this movie was giving me flashbacks to a far better film. And that is the film Ricky-O, The Story of Ricky, which actually does know how to tell a story about shit going on in a fucking prison and makes it interesting. And I just so happen to have Ricky-O sitting right there on Blu-ray. This will probably be like the 5th time I've watched my Blu-ray, because that is an amazing goddamned movie. I'm going to go watch that, and I'm going to pretend that this piece of shit never fucking existed. And with that, guys, we come to the close of this reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.